Welcome back to our module on the transforming leader. We had a little look at certain stages that have come out of research in terms of effective leadership in complex contexts related to sustainability. And what we're going to do for the next two sessions is take a look at the qualities of leadership that are needed to enable emergence. You remember we had the session looking at emergence with the caterpillar transforming into the butterfly. Well, what kind of leadership does it take when you're in that chaos point where the systems are collapsing and the new hasn't emerged yet? So the caterpillar's in its cocoon and it's not become the butterfly. How do you lead in that kind of context? So the first one here looks at the importance of adaptability, being able to take feedback and respond, and hold your integrity at the same time. So it's like in any of the martial arts, you develop the capacity that as an attack is coming at you, to in a relaxed but solid way hold your center line and then be able to take the energy that comes at you and transform it and allow it to flow past. So in the same context, when we're in very turbulent situations, how are we able to keep our center, keep calm, see stuff coming at us, and be able to transform the energy that comes at us in a way that's constructive? The next one looks at sitting in the chaos. So if we're in this chaos point, if we're in the eye of the storm, how do we rest in that place with all of the stuff that's going on? And it really is a kind of eye of the storm image, because what's happening in that chaos point is that old systems and stuff are falling away, are falling apart, and we need to be able to let them go. And we'll notice in ourselves that as the structures that we're trying to engage are disintegrating, that patterns in ourselves will also need to fall away. So we need to look at what is it that we need to let go of to be able to move with this system that we're leading. And then as we're letting go of things, that opens up space for new stuff to come in. So how do we pay attention to the new, let go of the old, and just sit in that space at the eye of the storm as the chaos is swirling around us? One of the key things we've said as we've looked at the S-curves is that you can't know the new from the old. As Einstein said, you can't fix a problem from the same way of thinking that created it. And you can't see the butterfly by just looking at the caterpillar. So how do we work our way forward here when we're in this kind of context? The only solution really is to acknowledge that we don't know. And the moment that we acknowledge we don't know, that we're able to just hold open a space for and trust that the insights that we need will come, that's how things will really come from the future, rather than ideas that we've already explored from the past. And this is a big challenge. You know, I've sat with heads of departments in big organizations and suggested change processes and said, you know, you're going to have to go with me here. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I know that something different will emerge out of it. And the kind of responses I'd get is, well, we've tried everything else, so let's go for this. But it's a key quality to develop, because most business leaders have been trained to know what they need to do and solve problems. That's what they're paid to do. They're not paid not to know. So we have to unlearn a load of stuff to be able to lead in these periods of transition. And there's a lovely quote here from Krishnamurti in his book on living and dying, where he says, one is not afraid of the unknown, but of losing the known. The known is memory, and to that memory, the mind clings. So as long as we're trying to work things out from our mind, we're working from past knowledge. And we really have to let go of that and actually come into a different part of ourselves and not try to work things out mentally or rationally. Allow ourselves not to know, to quieten the mind and see what then wants to emerge. So as we're in that space, we start to pay attention to the chaos that is swirling around us. And one of the things we're looking for are the patterns. Because you may remember that I said earlier that Ervin Laszlo in his work on the chaos point is very clear to point out that chaos doesn't mean a lack of order. Chaos means a subtle order. And that subtle order is the order of the new that's trying to emerge. So if you were to peek in to the cocoon of the caterpillar, you begin to see what biologists call the imaginal cells of the butterfly forming, the cells that are imagining the future form. And that's the subtle pattern that's always present in the chaos. So if we can not be distracted by the stuff that's falling apart, but really stay open to the new patterns that are emerging, then we can start to pay attention to what it is that's trying to come out the other side. And normally it's something that's actually radically simple. So when we look for something, if it seems overly complex, if it seems like a very complex solution, normally it's something that's coming out of our mind. It's something coming out of our past knowing. But when we begin to see something crystallize from the future, that future form, the butterfly, it's remarkably simple, and it encompasses all of the other pieces that we've been looking at. So we know we're getting there when we sense that we're at the simplicity which sits on the other side of complexity. In this process of emergence, one of the key things we have to do as leaders is seek out the diversity. It's like that line on the Laszlo chart where you've got those squiggly lines that are all experimentation, or in the bees where we take the energy from the worker bees and put it into the scout bees. Well, we actually have to consciously go out there and look for the divergent perspective. So those are often people in our organizations who we may have experienced as being a little irritating in the past because they've always come in with questions or criticisms of the way things are and trying to suggest we do new things, and you're just trying to get on and run an organization. Well, those are the people, the change agents, the diversity generators that we need to seek out at this time, because they're some of the early adapters who are picking up signals from the future. So find the divergent thinking, create contexts where they feel safe to share their new and different ideas, because traditionally they haven't been able to, and they've normally been punished or at least not rewarded for their differing opinion because they've been told to just get on and do their job. So very important to consciously seek out the diversity in the system. And as we sit in that chaos point and pay attention, we begin to see some of the patterns that are emerging. And what's important is that when we see something that seems to fit, that seems to be really coming from the future, that we give it attention. You know, people say whatever you give attention to grows. Well, you know, if somebody comes into your office and they're kind of one of these slightly oddball types, and they come in with a great idea and you're busy trying to clear your inbox, and you kind of say, yeah, very interesting, and they disappear off again, that may have been the solution that you were looking for. So when we're in these stages of change, we need to be really out with our antennae for the divergent opinions, and not only notice them, but actively nurture them through our attention. Actually create the conditions that enable this new thinking to develop itself. It's very easy to be kind of running things the way they've always been run, and we'll find it's harder to run our systems the old way, and so it could be taking up more and more of our energy as we try to stick to the way things have always been done. But it's very important to create the space to give attention to this new thinking and new possibilities as they emerge. Now, this journey from the old into the new isn't always easy, particularly for people who see the signs early, and particularly if you're in the leadership role where you have access to information that others don't have access to. And as you start to tell the story of what you're seeing, not everybody's going to like it, and not everyone's going to recognize it because they're just not seeing it. And people can sometimes get a little scared because they feel something's going to change, they can't see it themselves, and they're worried maybe about their job, about the future. How are they going to manage the change? They thought they were doing really well in what they were doing, and now it looks like everything's going to have to shift again. So it really requires boldness and courage to stand up for what we're sensing from the future. And it always reminds me of this image from a film I saw, where there's this great kind of canyon, and he's got to walk across the canyon, and he's been told there's an invisible bridge there. And the only way he knows is if he steps out into the empty space. And it's that step, that leap of faith, where you step out and then the bridge crystallizes under your foot, even though you couldn't be sure that it was there. But you have to take the step, or else it doesn't show up. Another image I get around this is, you feel, or you're maybe worried in these when you step out like this, that you're going to lose all your friends or lose your colleagues, or everyone's going to think you're nuts. Well, when you do step out, it's like you're hitting a different key on the piano, and that piano string starts to resonate with other piano strings. And when you start to speak out and make it explicit, other people will start to emerge who say, hey, I've always thought that, but I never dared to say it. And so new communities will start to form of the people who are beginning to sense that possible future. But often people aren't willing to be explicit about it because it seems so strange, or it doesn't fit in the norm, and they're not quite sure how others are going to respond, worried about their reputation. So it really does require you to step up with some boldness and courage and a very clear intention as you move into this unknown future. So those are some of the qualities from this session, and allow those to sink in and resonate and explore them, and then come back for session 4 and we'll look at a few more.